This recording. Okay, and hello everyone. Welcome to episode 6, season 2, I guess you would call it now, of our International Perspectives on Corpus Technology for Language Learning. This is an online seminar series in Corpora, data-driven learning, corpus-based language pedagogy, co-organized by the University of Queensland and the State University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, UNESP. This week, we are honored to have Dr. Ching Ma, Associate Professor at the Department of Linguistics and Modern Language at the Education University of Hong Kong, whose recent research has been exploring the notion of a corpus-based language pedagogy, or a kind of methodological framework for, I guess you would call it, although I may be corrected later on, but a methodological framework for developing kind of knowledge about corpora and how to use corpora in teaching practice. She's been developing this with case studies of pre-service teachers and in-service teachers. I myself have been fortunate enough to act as a reviewer on a paper that was just recently accepted in computer-assisted learning. So do look out for that one. And her main research interests include second language vocabulary acquisition, computer-assisted language learning, and mobile-assisted language learning as well. She's developed the parallel EAP Corpora for research purposes and the Corpus-aided platform for language, both of which I hope that you all take some time to check out at the end of this talk. An experimenter of corpus technology in teaching, which I think is an interesting turn of phrase, I guess you would call it, and a passionate English teacher trainer. And definitely her work sits at the intersection of the two fields. She's associate editor for 2 journals, that's International Journal of Computer-Assisted Language Learning and Teaching, and the Journal of China Association for Computer-Assisted Language Learning, or China PAL. Just before we get into today's talk, as is customary in a public speaking event in Australia, I'd like to first begin this session by acknowledging the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet, paying our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognize their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. Well, that's enough from me. What I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen, and Dr. Ma, the floor is now yours.
Okay. So now can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, here. Okay. Yes. Okay. There. Oh, sorry, not this page. Okay. Better now. Yes.
Yes, we are good.
Yeah, okay. Good. Okay. Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. No matter where you are. So hello, everyone. Now, first, I'd like to thank Peter and their colleagues, Australia and in Brazil, for inviting me to join this very meaningful, seminar series. It is a great opportunity, to get to know, so many experts of corpus linguistics, and get updated, with many new different, perspectives about corpus technology and its, applications to language education. So thank you very much, Peter and your colleagues. Now, today it's my great honor to present my seminar on the corpus-based language pedagogy for free and in-service teachers, theory, research, and practice. Yeah, Peter already, introduced me. So I just give you, some additional information about myself. I received my PhD at the University of Louvain from Belgium, and my supervisor is Professor Sylviane Granger. So she lighted, a spark of corpus linguistics in me, even though I did not focus on corpus linguistics in my PhD thesis. So initially I chose core, but corpus technology, falls in the broad area of core. In recent years, I started to experiment, how corpus technology could be integrated into language teaching. Since most of my students, undergraduate or postgraduate students, they will become English teachers after graduation. Okay. So that's some information about me. So I try to be brief. So I'm not going to repeat the same information. Okay, now the outline for today. Now, first I will give you some, brief background of Corpora in language education. Then I'm going to, highlight, some, key theories, underpinning my CPLP and how I constructed this new language pedagogy, CPLP. Okay. So it's a bit similar to, TBLT. So it's a kind of a language pedagogy. Okay. Then I'm going to introduce, two-step, corpus training framework for teachers and student teachers to help them develop CPLP. Then I'm going to present, two recent, research case studies, which used, the two-step, corpus training framework. Then I'm going to, share with you our dedicated, CAP website, with rich CPLP resources for supporting, teachers and the student teachers development of CPLP. Now, finally, maybe we can discuss, some future directions for CPLP research and practice. So this is the outline. Okay. So let's focus on, approaches to Corpora in language education, or the corpus application in language learning and teaching. Now, generally speaking, there are two kinds of approaches to corpus applications in language teaching: direct and indirect approaches. The indirect approach means developing corpus-based dictionaries, for example, like Collins and Macmillan's, or developing references or teaching materials, for example, the Longman spoken grammar book published by Biber or more recently the testing materials. For example, those recently published by Kalis and Magotz and Lenko Simeska. Now, compared with the indirect approach, in which the concern is to use Corpora to inform teaching materials. In a direct approach, the emphasis is on using Corpora directly during classroom teaching. So that means learners, have the opportunities, to working with, Corpora during the classroom settings. Okay. Now, to date, there's some evidence, about indirect use of Corpora in language teaching, primarily through reference publishing. But there's little evidence of direct use of Corpora in language teaching. So maybe we can take a look, at the nature, maybe let's focus on the direct, corpus applications in classroom teaching. So the most well-known direct approach is DDL, advocated by Tim Jones. In DDL, learners act as language researchers or detectors, meaning they are assuming a very active role in learning in language learning process. And they are, encouraged to search in corpus and discover language rules and patterns. Now, indeed, many other researchers supported this idea that learning through, Corpora, encourages learner discovery skills and inductive learning, thus enhancing the learner autonomy. Let's study the nature of DDL by examining, some of the classic quotes from, like Jones and Bolton. So according to Jones, we need to cut out the middleman and give learner direct access to corpus data. The middleman means us, language teachers. But our experience, often, tells us many students have difficulty in working directly with corpus data. They need our teacher guidance. Bolton defined, DDL this way. So I'm not going to read the definition, but you can see from the keywords which I highlighted, in this definition. At the same time, it suggests that, our learners, who are going to, adopt DDL should be advanced learners, autonomous learners, and study in higher education settings. But the problem is not all of our learners are advanced and autonomous. So it means that the classic DDL approach without teacher guidance is only suitable for certain types of learners in higher education, but not all language learners, especially those less proficient learners with less learner autonomy. For example, those secondary or vocational school students. Okay, although there's little evidence of Corpora application in teaching, many corpus linguists and researchers conducted empirical studies directly with learners and resulted in many positive learning outcomes. For example, Bolton stated, the overall body of empirical research in DDL provides overwhelmingly favorable reactions to DDL on the part of learners. In a meta-analysis by Bolton and Cobb, the effect size of corporate use on learners' language improvement was large, with Cohen's D, ranging from 0.95 to 1.50. Now, corporate use, helps students improve various language skills, including vocabulary, collocations, grammar, and writing. Facing these positive learner outcomes, we should not forget that most of the above empirical research actually, is conducted by, corpus linguists or teacher educators with expertise in corpus linguistics. But literature, also reminds us that the role of Corpora, in ordinary language teachers' classroom teaching is minimum. So this means a corpus-based approach to language teaching is largely unknown to the large body of language teachers. Now, let's examine some of the key factors that discouraged teachers' use of Corpora in classroom teaching. Now, as mentioned earlier, the majority of corpus research took place in higher education settings, especially, in area of EAP or ESP. This research, were conducted by corpus researchers or teachers with strong research interests. This means lots of corpus resources were created for advanced learners in higher education settings. By contrast, there's lack of corpus resources and creative corpus-based activities for young learners. There are a few exceptions. For example, the studies by Kim and Costwet-Stell, focused on primary school students. It is also reported that teachers encountered various difficulties in learning and teaching with Corpora, now including technical issues, suitable Corpora, lack of time and confidence in operating complicated Corpora, and they had difficulty in creating corpus-based teaching materials. Now, a key factor for accounting for most teachers' unfamiliarity with Corpora is that, corpus-based teacher training is largely absent from pre- and in-service teachers' education programs during university or professional and development in a career service. Okay, that should be the key reason. Now, let's review some, empirical studies that reported, corpus training for teachers and student teachers. Now, overall, most of such empirical studies, focus on, teachers or student teachers' perceptions, so attitudes towards the use of Corpora after training. Now, these studies, they did not, investigate whether their participants had actually applied Corpora in a classroom teaching or not. There are a couple of, studies involving, student teachers that try to investigate, the ability to apply, corpus technology into designing corpus-based teaching materials. For example, Heather and Helt, asked 6 student teachers, to design corpus-based teaching materials. But the data analysis focused on the corpus literacy with limited attention to the pedagogic skills. In another study, Lenko-Simanska analyzed 53 sets of lesson materials designed by student teachers. The results show that these student teachers lacked pedagogic skills for successful exploitation of Corpora language teaching. A common finding of these studies is that after corpus training, teachers or student teachers may perceive corpus as a useful learning tool For example, they will consult the corpus to check the accuracy of the language or language rules, which will appear in a teaching. But less likely, they would perceive, corpus as a teaching tool. That means maybe it would be rare for them to, provide, corpus demonstration or ask students to search directly in the corpus during the classroom teaching. So there's a paradox. Research shows lots of, positive learning outcomes after using Corpora, but the majority of language teachers know little about Corpora and they are reluctant to explore Corpora in classroom teaching. So how do we move this forward? I suggest that we formalize Corpora use in teaching, and we need a new language pedagogy. So this is what I termed CPLP, Corpus-Based Language Pedagogy. So the term CPLP is developed based on Schulman's pedagogic content knowledge, PCK, which blends subject knowledge with general pedagogy. The CPLP, blends corpus linguistics with language pedagogy. Now, in our recent article, CPLP is defined as the ability to use the technology of corpus linguistics to facilitate language teaching in a classroom context. CPLP emphasizes students' direct use of Corpora in classroom. They may further extend the corpus use after classroom. Although CPLP is initially developed from PCK, it could also be considered as a type of TPAC, technological pedagogical content knowledge. I think CPLP involves the use of corpus technology. Now, TPAC is an extension of PCK, referring to a synthesized form of knowledge for the purposes of integrating ICT and educational technology into classroom teaching and learning. So corpus technology is a type of, common educational technology for language learning purposes. So if TPAC, we got TPAC by blending technology with PCK, and then we also can get CPLP from blending corpus technology, which is under, the corpus linguistics, okay? So CPLP is blended, from corpus technology and language pedagogy. What are the essential knowledge skills for conducting, corpus-based classroom teaching for teachers and student teachers? Here I would propose two key concepts. The first is corpus literacy. Okay. There are 5 essential components for developing corpus literacy. First, teachers or student teachers need to understand what a corpus is, right? They should know, how to conduct some basic corpus searches, on some, commonly used, online corpora, such as like BNC and COCA. They should be able to, analyze, how to analyze, the searched corpus results, how to work with concordance lines, okay? And they should also know, the advantages and limitations of corpus use in language learning and teaching. Yeah, the second, key concept I would like to highlight is CPLP. Okay, so we already, provided a definition. So what CPLP, comprises? Okay, now based on Schulman's, PCK framework, I identified, 4 or 5 key perspectives. Now, first, we have to understand, the purpose of corpus use, and also the purpose of use corpus linguistics in our teaching. Okay. Why do we need to, ask our students to work with corpus? Maybe because we would like to, for example, train them how to learn, inductively, right? And we would like to train them to become, independent language learners, right? Okay. And we also need to understand our target students, okay? What are the learning needs, what are the, difficulties they face, and how do we use, corpus data to help them address the learning needs and help them solve the learning difficulties? And then, we need to, we teachers need to transform the corpus literacy or corpus knowledge, into designing some corpus-based teaching materials, okay? And then, we should conduct the CPLP, lesson with appropriate instructional strategies. Have we provided, sufficient guidance, to scaffold our students, working with corpus data? Okay, and finally, we could evaluate our own, corpus-based teaching and self-reflect on, our teaching and identify what can be further improved. Now, with reference to the two types of, essential knowledge skills needed for CPLP, that means corpus literacy and CPLP, I've created a two-step, CPLP training framework to make the training easier for our, teacher participants or student-teacher participants. Now, in step one, we can focus on corpus literacy to help teachers and student teachers develop corpus skills. For example, how to conduct, different corpus searches, how to identify keyword, collocate synonyms, okay? So this can be conducted in classroom online workshops. In step two, we focus on, our CPLP to help them develop, specific pedagogic skills, for teaching with corpus technology in online. We may create, online collaborative learning environment for them. So, participants, can complete some collaborative tasks online together. And finally, participants could develop the competence in designing, corpus-based teaching materials. So this would be our learning outcome. In our CPLP training, another key for providing effective CPLP training is to use interactive learning. So for this purpose, I created an interaction model, where interaction goes through 4 stages: individual learning, intra-group discussion, inter-group feedback, community sharing. Now, for example, right, now we can lecture about some key concepts about corpus linguistics, or corpus applications in teaching and learning. And then we could ask, our students, or teacher participants, to do some individual tasks to digest these concepts, okay? They can do some, group work to discuss with each other. Then different groups can provide feedback to each other to help each group revise the group work. Finally, the participants, share the group work with the class community. So I've tried this interaction model in both classroom-based and online CPLP training and find it helpful. So this is how I applied this 2-step training model in conducting CPLP training workshops. For example, in step 1, I included lecture, and I introduced some, essential concepts about, corpus, corpus linguistics, and I also provided, some corpus demonstration. And then I will ask students to, to do some hands-on tasks to search directly, with corpus. And then, we'll ask our students, to work in groups and brainstorm, some ideas, in which, corpus data can be used to create some, simple learning and teaching activities. Then they can present these activities to a whole class. Now, step 2, focused on pedagogic skills. And this step can take place entirely online. Students can, complete some individual tasks, for example, completing some online interactive quiz. And then, they could work in a group and co-design, some corpus-based lesson materials. And then, different groups can provide, a feedback to each other and help, different groups to revise, the corpus-based lesson design. And finally, they can share, the improved lesson design, to the whole class at the community level. Okay. Also, to help my students, design or teacher participants, design, some CPLP lesson activities, I created the 4-step model. This 4-step model was based on, Susan Gass's, classic, second language acquisition model. The first stage is to test students' knowledge. For example, you can show students maybe some language examples with errors, okay, and ask students to, identify the errors in order to identify, the lexical, gaps, okay, knowledge gaps. And then, we could, show our students how to do some hands-on corpus searches, okay? And then encourage students to search for, language examples, okay? And then at the third stage, we encourage students, to analyze, to summarize the searched, corpus data, those concordance lines, and try to encourage them to summarize the language use patterns. Now, finally, is the output stage, usage. That means, after students, know about the accurate, language pattern and forms, we should design a variety of, learning activities, to help them consolidate the use of these accurate, language forms or patterns. We may include, for example, like, traditional exercise, gap filling, right? Close test, right? We may also, make students, discuss in a pair or group, do some oral production, right? And finally, we can make them, for example, do some essay writing, and by using, these, search language forms or patterns or rules. Okay. Well, now I'm going to maybe just show you briefly, what, our learning product is, okay? Here, I will maybe just explain to you briefly, what kind of CPLP lessons designed by our student teachers. We did, collect some, CPLP lessons designed by in-service teachers, which were hosted on our CAP website, which I'll show you later. For example, in this lesson, this student, Angel Zhao, okay, designed a CPLP lesson for primary 6 students, okay, to help them differentiate between make and do, because Chinese students, they cannot, they don't know how to use the 2 words accurately. They just, collocate make and do randomly, okay. I think we may just have time to watch for 1 minute, a few minutes, okay.
Hello everyone. Our lesson plan focuses on collocations with make and do. Our target learners are upper primary students. The corpus that we used for this lesson plan is COCA. And the reason that we decided to teach the different usage between make and do is that many Chinese students are confused with the differences in the definitions of these 2 words, simply because they would be translated into the same character in Chinese. We created our lesson plan based on the 4 principles that Dr. Ma has given to all of us during the corpus workshop. The steps of the 4 principles are as follows. The first step is to test students' knowledge and detect lexical errors. The second principle is to provide students with hands-on corpus searches and help them look for language patterns. The third step is to encourage inductive discovery by students and ask them to summarize language patterns. And finally, the teacher will provide output exercises for students. Let's first discuss testing students' knowledge. So, in the beginning of the lesson, we will divide the class into groups of 4 and ask the students to match the words with pictures and put the words in the right boxes. The matching part of the picture here is a bit too busy. So instead of having so many words and pictures, you may reduce it to 12 of them. You don't have to use the exact words in this picture. In a real classroom, the teacher may use this opportunity to test students' knowledge on the vocabulary they learned in previous lessons. Then, of course, ask them to put the words in the correct columns. The reason that we use this picture with colors and not using the traditional way, for example, mix and match words, is just because we want the students to have a bit more fun doing this activity, and we want to engage them better. The purpose of this activity is for the teacher to detect lexical errors. Therefore, the teacher's reminder here is that once the teacher identifies a knowledge gap from this activity, he or she may write the students' wrong collocations on the board so that everyone can see them, and tell the students that these are some of the mistakes you guys made. We'll come back to them later. Now, the teacher may help the students summarize language patterns. He or she may provide 2 tables as handouts to students. Table 1 for words that collocate with make, Table 2 for words that collocate with do. Then ask the students to summarize the words and find the differences of definitions between make and do. As you can see, there are 10 words on each table, and we've chosen easier words for students to work with. If the teachers still find that students are having trouble summarizing the language patterns, he or she may provide some scaffolding with the class. For example, if you make something, is there a result? Yes. For example, if you do something, is there a result? Maybe not. What are the examples? What's another word for make, etc. We don't expect students to summarize.
Okay, so I'm not going to stop here. Okay. So can you see my PowerPoint, or I also? Oh, sorry. So I'm going to share it again. Okay. Says here. All right. Yeah. Okay, so can you see my PowerPoint, the case study 1? Yes?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. I'm going to skip that because okay. Now I present, 2 case studies based on the data collected, while providing CPLP training for student teachers and teachers. Now, first, I will share with you an article, published last year on student teachers CPLP development. I will just focus on 2 selected research questions. So basically, research question 1, trying to find out to what extent student teachers could develop their corpus literacy, and the second research question focus on measuring their CPLP ability, whether they can design satisfactory corpus-based lessons after receiving our training. Okay. So we adopted a mixed methods in this study. The participants, were 31 MATSO students, including Angel, okay. So they were aged, 24 to 30. So I embedded CPLP training in teaching 1 MA course on vocabulary teaching for my students. The procedure basically, follows the, aligned to the 2-step training framework, which I, illustrated earlier. Okay. The whole training, was spread over 4 weeks. So week 1, is the step 1, and week 2 to 4, step 2. So so I'm not going to repeat these training activities. So basically, I explained them before. Okay. So the final product, they have to complete, working groups. They complete 1, group, corpus-based vocabulary lesson design. And then they will provide, online feedback to each other, to different groups, to help each other, improve the lesson design. So that would be the final learning product. The instruments, I designed, a corpus literacy survey comprising, 16, 6-point Likert scale questions. Based on the 5 dimensions of corpus literacy, which I, discussed earlier. I also, designed, 10 evaluation criteria for evaluating, the CPLP lessons designed by our students. Altogether, we got 8 groups, of students. So they completed, 8 group CPLP lesson designs, and we also interviewed these 8 groups. So the results. So you can see from the table, the reliability, for each dimension, of the subscales we included in the corpus literacy, is pretty good. The lowest 0.77, the highest 0.96. And when you examine the mean, the maximum score is 6. You can see that the majority of means cluster around 5 out of 6. So this means that most of our student teachers self-perceive that they have developed a good, level of corpus literacy. Okay, so all 8 group lessons, CPLP lessons, were rated by 2 readers independently. So the maximum score is 60. Okay, so we can convert it to percentage. So among the 8 groups, you can see that all groups, reached a score of at least 70%. The lowest 72%. And 6 of the groups, reached more than 80% of the 4 scores. So that means in general, these students, were able to, had to develop some good ability to design some corpus-based, teaching activities, at least judged by, the experts. Okay. Okay. In our second study, we focused on 2 in-service teachers, CPLP development. This article just appeared, I think, 2 weeks ago online. Okay. We just focus on one research question. How did the 2 university teachers develop their CPLP? We adopted the model of pedagogical reasoning and action for PCK from Schulman, to analyze the data. Okay, in 5 stages. Okay, so the first stage is comprehension. For example, like they have the understanding, subject knowledge like corpus linguistics and English language, and the teaching purposes. Why do they need to use, ask students to work with corpus? Okay. The second stage is transformation. Teachers need to transfer comprehended ideas to design of corpus-based teaching activities. And then instruction, they need to conduct the teaching and the sequencing, managing student learning during the teaching. Okay, finally, they can self-evaluate, the teaching practice and evaluate student learning outcomes. And finally, they can reflect on the teaching practice, do some self-criticism and identify some, points to be further improved in future. So this is a research context. So we provided, the workshop training on CPLP for some language teachers, as we did for our student teachers. Okay. Then we invite, at the end of the CPLP training, we invited, our teachers to design, a CPLP lesson. They have to, design a plan, include some concrete, activities or worksheets, to address the students' learning needs or problems. Okay. Then again, similar to students, teachers, they need to share the lesson plans with all, with all the other teachers. They post them in an online platform, they receive comments, and then they would revise the lesson plans. And finally, these teachers were, invited to implement their CPLP lesson in real classroom teaching, with their own students. For various reasons, only 2 university teachers, completed all this procedure. So they formed the participants, for this study. So we got 2 participants, Tim and May. Both were very experienced, language teachers, with 10 and 15 years of teaching experience. Okay, but they also differ in many differ in many perspectives regarding the background. For example, Tim, was teaching final year science students. In his teaching, he focused on academic writing, especially grammatical patterns for academic writing. Okay, as a functional linguist and love of corpus, Tim actually was a proficient user of Corpora. May's students are second-year English majors. And in her teaching, she focused on critical reading, specifically discourse features of speech text. Now, before participated in our study, May had no knowledge of Corpora. So that's a difference, these are the difference between the 2 teachers. So our data resources included, 4 sets, the CPLP lesson materials designed by the 2 teachers. And then we conducted pre-interview before they conducted the classroom teaching. And we recorded, the lesson, okay. And then we conducted the post-interview after they conducted the classroom teaching. Similar to their student teachers, we used Schulman's 5 stages to analyze our data. So first we coded all the data, and we sorted out some themes. Then we produced some analytical memo for each teacher to summarize the key features at each stage for each teacher. Then we made some cross-case comparison between the teachers to identify the similarities and differences. Okay. And then we show the data set to both teachers to verify our observations. So this is member checking. Our data analysis shows that 5 components are key for developing teacher CPLP. For example, both May and Tim, had good language subject knowledge. Okay, they understood where the learning context of their students and the learning needs and difficulties, and they practiced. They made great efforts to practice and learn about CPLP. Compared with May, Tim May had less pedagogical knowledge. Tim had 10 years of teaching. Okay, but maybe this is not the key issue. Now, when we observed Tim's teaching, he adopted a lecture dominated teaching. But Tim had impressive amount of corpus knowledge before he participated in our study. He used Corpora regularly for his teaching for his learning and research purposes, but never for the teaching purpose. Okay, now for the first time he integrated Corpora into his classroom teaching. Okay, compared with May, May started with 0 corpus knowledge, and she learned everything about corpus technology, from our workshop training and also, through self-learning, reading literature. But May, had, more advanced pedagogical knowledge. This is mainly reflected, by her interactive teaching. We have observed from her lesson. Okay, now very quickly, I'm going to show you, what CPLP resources we have developed to support both student teachers and teachers CPLP development. So all our self-created CPLP resources are hosted in our CAP website, the Corpus-Based platform for language teachers. Okay, actually we won 2 international awards with this website. So first we won the we got the silver medal of the International Exhibition of Inventions of Geneva in 2019, and then we won the Access to Language Education awarded by Calico. Okay. Our website, the CAP website, is free and open to all. And now we have recorded, in average, 550 visits per month, okay, from more than 20 countries and regions, okay. And this website received lots of, positive feedback from our teacher participants. And we uploaded, we created various, a variety of, learning resources. We uploaded some short and practical tutorials, text videos, how to use online Corpora, BNC Corpora Lex Tutor. So this is actually focused on, corpus literacy. We also uploaded, 11 self-designed training materials to show how to design corpus-based lessons. And we also encourage, our student teachers and some of the in-service teachers to try out their CPLP lessons. Altogether, we uploaded 8 such classroom-based videos. Okay, we didn't, upload the whole video. We made some we did some editing. Cut each video, from, for example, like 1 hour to only 10 minutes, so the readers, can have an idea of the key stages, included in each CPLP lesson. Apart from making teaching videos, we also, uploaded 64 set of corpus-based lesson plans, okay, including concrete worksheets, okay. designed by our Corpus team, our student teachers and our in-service teachers. Okay, these Corpus-based lessons, cover various language skills: vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, reading, writing, and translation. And the target students of these lessons, including primary, secondary, and tertiary students. Okay. Conclusion and future directions for CPLP research. So if I have time, I will maybe show you briefly our website. Okay. Now, from our research and practice, you can see that Corpus literacy and CPLP are two theoretically distinct concepts. So corpus literacy, I think, is similar to subject knowledge, right? Okay, and CPLP is similar to the PCK, right? Okay, so these two should be treated differently. Now, based on the differentiation of these two concepts, we created a two-step framework. Okay, involving online collaboration. I think this is one of feature of this two-step training framework, right? To make the training more interesting, right? Okay, so this kind of a two-step framework involving online collaboration is suitable for developing both pre and in-service teacher CPLP, at least from our research data. Both PCK and TPAC, approaches or frameworks are useful for investing teacher CPLP development. Okay, personally, I prefer to use PCK because I think compared with TPAC, PCK is more straightforward. Okay, that's why I use PCK in both of my case studies. Okay, now what about the future directions for CPLP practice? Now, from our experience, many students, not just our student teachers, right? They become, frustrated. They encountered, difficulty in, exploring Corpus data simply because, they encounter some technical issues, okay, regarding Corpus use. So Corpus educators should, help teachers and students, solve technical issues regarding Corpus use. For example, developing, more user-friendly Corpus technology. In this sense, I think COCA made a good attempt. I think COCA was actually revamped, 2 years ago, and they included, a simple search syntax, okay, and which I think is more user-friendly for users now. Now, due to the pandemic, we teachers often, need to conduct online teaching. For example, one of the teachers included in our second case study originally planned a face-to-face CPLP lesson. In the last minute, he was forced to, teach this lesson online because of the pandemic. Okay, so that means, we also need to, help our teachers develop their online pedagogy to help them deliver, online CPLP teaching more effectively. Now, from the learner's perspective, how to make CPLP lessons more interesting or attractive for learners is a key issue that our language teachers should consider. If you just ask students to work with concordance line all the time, it's very boring, right? It's really difficult to keep their attention, right? So this is a question we all of our language teachers should consider. And finally, how to motivate busy school teachers to try out CPL lessons is another key issue, our Corpus educators should consider. From my experience, almost half of our teacher participants, are from the primary or secondary schools, okay? They are quite motivated to develop, CPLP lessons. At that stage, they are quite happy, okay? But then, when we ask them to try out the CPLP lessons, they hesitated. For example, just early this month, I tried to convince two secondary school teachers, to try out their CPLP lesson. One teacher told me, he or she, they need to, this year, they have to teach, senior 3 students. So when you teach senior 3 students, mostly, the teaching centers around, helping them prepare for the examinations to go to university. Okay, so they don't have time to try out new approaches. Okay, and another teacher told me that, well, they are teaching, okay, a new course, this semester, So they would become very busy. So they had no time to try out, our CPLP, their CPLP lesson. Okay. Okay, so that's my references. And then, thank you. I think actually I just want to maybe share with you our CAP website. Just 1 minute, okay? If you still have patience. Can you see the CAP website? Yes or no? Yes?
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
just typing in the link.
Yeah, okay. Chat. So basically, I will advise you to take a look here, teaching activities. So here, okay. So you can see that for vocabulary teaching, we got primary, secondary, tertiary, okay, and then the same for each different linguistic skill. So maybe I just show you vocabulary teaching. What kind of CPLP lesson materials we have for primary school students. So actually, you can just click here and download the the lesson materials and the plan designed by our in-service teachers or student teachers. They have already given consent for us to upload them on internet, so you can see that. So this this lesson was designed for P6 primary 6 students to help them differentiate the ed and ing adjectives. This is, I think, is a common problem faced by many primary school learners. Even for junior secondary school students, okay? So the learning objectives, okay, the corpus used, okay, the context. They also summarized, the rationale for the design of this lesson. So this lesson was divided into, 4 stages, okay? So this is a lesson plan, okay? So a general lesson plan, okay? And then they also included the concrete working sheets for each stage, okay? All right, okay. All right, okay. So you see some, use of concordance lines. You also see some, communicative, interactive learning activities, okay. In this activity, the teacher, would help, students to summarize, the use of a board and the boring, okay. Okay. So the final work, the final homework is communicative. Students have to, do some role plays. They also extend the learning of, border boring to the learning of many other pairs, with similar ending. Okay. Okay. You may also watch the video. So if you scroll down to the end, okay, implementing Corpus-based lessons in real classroom, teaching videos, primary. Okay. And if you click on this video, and this actually is the, it's a 45-minute lesson. Okay, we record it. Okay, I think it's less than 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. So I think I used almost 1 hour. Okay, so thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thanks so much. And we do have some great questions that have come in. But of course, I'd like to thank our speaker tonight. Obviously, it's difficult in this kind of online setting to hear the crowd, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that everybody was very satisfied. The resources that you have shared and the experiences from the case studies have been really valuable. So just before we stop the recording for today, I'm just going to share my screen here and introduce the speaker for next week. We have Dr. Reka Jablonkai, who's tuning in from University of UK. She's going to be presenting Transforming Language Teaching with Corpora, a session on bridging research and practice, dealing with case studies in the field of corpus-based English for specific purposes. So do tune in for that next week. That will be a Monday session, so not much turnaround between today and the next upcoming session, but the time will be set at the usual time, the same time as today's session. There was also a brief plug for a conference which is being organized by Dr. Ma at the Education University of Hong Kong, but You don't have to travel to Hong Kong to attend because the meeting will be conducted, the conference will be conducted online via Zoom, and this is between the 6th and the 9th of December. I'll be presenting part of a workshop after being invited by Dr. Ma, which I'm very pleased about and very excited for. You can send in. I will copy this link here into the chat so that you can see the call for papers, but if you're interested in presenting an abstract for this conference, the abstract submission deadline is coming up on the 31st of July. So here is the link for that conference for everyone who might be interested in sending in an abstract there, and we hope to see as many of you there as possible. So I'll now go through some of the questions that I got, and the first question is from Nathan, and he says he's thinking of using corpus-based language pedagogy with extensive reading. Instead of starting by looking at common errors or unfamiliar vocabulary, can he start with the kind of vocabulary that students might look up during the extensive reading activities? Do you have any learning or teaching materials that you've either come across yourself or that might be available on the CAP website that deal with that, with the use of Corpora in extensive reading practice?
Okay, thank you for this question. I mentioned that, for example, we got a corpus team, who conducted, CPLP, workshops for our teacher participants. And maybe just let me share my screen again. Okay, so if you click on teaching activities, okay, you can see that we have reading and writing for secondary tertiary, right? Okay, so actually earlier last year we invited some experts who have experts in conducting corpus-based reading lessons with students. Okay, so maybe you can take a look. And also maybe but for reading, I think most of the lesson designed for secondary school or tertiary levels. Okay, some are for academic reading. Okay, so maybe you can just take a look. I think for example, one of our invited speakers, Professor He An'e, she introduced a Versa text to participants. So by using Versa text, you can identify some keywords, frequently occurring words in a piece of reading text. I think this is quite useful. Another of our speakers, Dr. Chen Xiao, also introduced word sift. I think it's also free online. I think the function is similar to Versa text. So basically, you can just enter a text, and then you can see similar to word cloud. So all those keywords, frequent words, will be extracted by the software. Okay, and then maybe based on these keywords identified, maybe you can try to help students try to reorganize what happened in the story. Okay, so I think this could be quite interesting. Okay.
Yep, I think that's really good, and I also Versatext was used for exactly the same purpose in my paper that came out in computer assisted language learning late last year, where we had the lesson plan that was submitted using Versatext to look at an extended reading of some. I think the lesson was about tourism descriptions of some famous places in Indonesia, and they would get these reading passages off the internet. And one of the kind of really useful things that Versatext does is to kind of organize the vocabulary into different word lists by frequency. So from that, you can kind of also check whether the reading that you're providing is actually okay for your students in terms of whether the vocabulary that you're presenting is high frequency enough for them to maybe have seen it before, or it points out some of the vocabulary, the topic specific vocabulary that doesn't fall into those word lists, which are the kind of nouns and verbs and adjectives that really tell you what that reading is about in terms of it's almost like a keyword analysis, but without actually having another corpus with which to compare it to. So it's a really useful function of Versatext that would work well for extended reading. And so it's great also that we've also got that lesson there on the CAT website, which I think is just a really good resource, and I hope more of you get to check that out. Thank you for that. Now, our next question is from Fiona Farr at the University of Limerick. It's good to see you tonight. She would like to thank you, first of all, for your talk. And in relation to the student teachers in education, can you say how the CBLP instruction fitted or aligned with other parts of their education program? So that's the first part. Also, was this the CBLP was that an assessment in their teacher education program? Because if the answer is, well, depending on your answer to the first two questions, did these factors, do you think, have any influence on the success of the integration as a whole?
Actually, because at the moment, we just try to integrate, CBLP training into some existing courses. Okay. For example, for my when I teach one course, Lexis Morphology and Semantics, okay, so I especially allocated one session to introduce corpus literacy and the CBLP, and then they have to do some online learning for 3 weeks, and then they have to complete the lesson design. Okay, at the moment, this is kind of optional, but many students, they love this opportunity because I mean, it's the first time for them to design some real, teaching activities, but also some students suggest me, well, maybe you can make this a kind of assignment, to give them grades. Well, yeah, I will think about it. So that's one way, try to, integrate, this kind of CBLP teaching formally in our curriculum, okay? And for example, like I focus on vocabulary teaching, and we also got a corpus team. For example, my colleague, Dr. Rebecca Chen, she would introduce, corpus, in her lesson, in her courses, to show students how to use spoken corpus data to teach pronunciation. And got another colleague, Dr. Jackie Lee. She's an expert grammar, definitely, she also included, Corpus resources in teaching her course, Pedagogy grammar, Yeah, so actually, yes, we are working, from different, linguistic skills, and yeah, fortunately, we are all teaching, our MAT so students, some of us are also teaching some undergraduate, BEd EL students, who will become English teachers soon. Okay. Yeah, for the assessment, yeah, actually for the for sake of time, I didn't share with you one slide. So now I think it's a good time to share this slide with you. Okay, so now can you see this slide? The CBLP lesson evaluation criteria. For example, after we ask our student teachers, to design CBLP lessons, okay, we have to evaluate, how good the lesson, plan or teaching materials are, right? So we designed these evaluation criteria. Okay, I mean, it's pretty simple, but it's quite useful, So we focus on, the language pedagogy, the corpus use, and the language use, because English is most of their second language, okay, not the native language. Okay, we do have a few native speaking students like Angel. I mean, in the video, actually, she's from North America. Okay. So I don't know whether I have answered the two questions satisfactory, or do you still have other questions?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm not sure if I'm right in this, but it could be the case also that we know that in for this particular one, we had one teacher who was teaching online, right, and the other who was teaching in a classroom setting, which probably also influenced the integration that took place.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, yes, I explained earlier in the second case study. So actually, so May conducted, her teaching in a classroom. Okay. Tim originally planned, his teaching in a classroom, but then due to the outbreak of pandemic, he had to change to online teaching. So that means at that time when he was teaching CPLP online, he wasn't, 100% well prepared, So that's why I raised one issue in my end of this research article. We have to, help our teachers to develop the online pedagogy, so they know how to, deliver, CPLP lessons online more effectively. So this is another issue we need to address, Yeah. I mean, we can deliver, a CPLP lesson online. It doesn't mean that we just work with Corpus, but we can make use of many other teaching tools, especially those interactive teaching tools, So I think this is something we can explore in future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, there's so many factors involved in whether a given intervention is going to be successful or not. Some things can help, some things can really hinder, and how it is integrated within an overall framework is crucial. And that's why this idea about corpus-based language pedagogy, as Dr. Ma's approach, is actually really useful in understanding how best to approach that. Got a question then from Golnoza. This just relates to again, about the instructors. Did you teach the instructors first before you started the experiment, or were they taught by instructors who had been taught beforehand? The problem is she's going to introduce CPLP in their context, but they've got no idea how to start.
Yes. Because as I mentioned several times, we got a Corpus team in our department. Okay, so they are all professional academics. Okay, some of them have taught even in secondary schools before. So all these, workshop training are provided by us. Okay, we also invited another, Corpus specialist, special in teaching from like Baptist University and South China Normal University. Okay, but they're all academics. Okay, so we didn't train instructors. We are instructors ourselves. Okay, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I think the idea is we are training our student teachers. They are postgraduate students. Okay, I think some of them had good potential. To become instructors. Okay.
Right. Okay, I've got a question from Sandy. She's teaching academic reading this semester. She's introduced the students to Corpus websites such as COCA, but they've not found ways to monitor students' progress in what they're doing, which I actually think is a really good question, and that very often we can let the students we can teach them how to use Corpora and let them go off and to do their investigations, but tracking them over time can be a little bit more tricky unless you have like data analytics built into your software, which is really rare. I had that in Hong Kong previously, but I haven't been able to have it since. So what kind of method would you suggest for tracking an intervention as it's ongoing?
Yeah, okay, thank you for this question. I believe this maybe should be quite important. Well, in our context, we did not specifically track whether our student teachers, or students have used, Corpus resources afterwards. But when we interviewed some of our student teachers who, went through our CPLP training, they told us, they shared with us some good examples. Some of those teachers are also, teaching other students. They provided, tutorials, for the other, less advanced, students. Okay, they tell me that, for example, they introduced COCA to one of their students, and then they found COCA very useful. It's an excellent tool for learning collocations. So we didn't track whether students use it or not. So our purpose is just to train, our student teachers first. Train them in basic Corpus literacy, how to search in some, free, online Corpora like Studio or COCA, right? And then we also show them, the pedagogy skills, how to integrate, Corpus technology into designing and teaching, Corpus-based lessons. I think this is our primary focus. So we didn't work directly with ordinary language learners. Okay, so thank you. Okay.
I guess as a suggestion, I would say, well, if your students are doing writing, for example, you could ask them to highlight where in the text that they've used a corpus to make, say, a revision, or to find some vocabulary that they might not have found through other means. So that's one potential method. Or they can keep although it can be quite difficult, they might try to keep like some kind of journal about revisions that they make and corpus queries that they produce. But I find the easiest way is really just to mark on the student's text, saying particular color highlight where which software they used, if they're using more than one, and that's in the absence of software that will save that information. That's a really basic but kind of effective way of seeing how often the students are using the corpora and whether the corpus consultation is successful or not. Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. So the final question is related, well, it's from Rong Fan, and they ask, while there is a lot of research on corpus-assisted language learning in recent years, there is still little such research in Chinese mainland context. Could you please share some suggestions about the future development of corpus use in China? Thank you.
Well, I think this is China is a huge context. Okay. So I mean, I think first we have to identify a specific context. Okay, but I do believe in China, for example, like there are some active corpus researchers, for example, like Dr. He An'e and Dr. Chen Xiao from South China Normal Universities. They've been training language teachers for many years, but maybe most of the work are published in Chinese. So okay, so maybe the work are rarely read by international readers. For example, one of my current doctoral student, okay, he compiled DIY, corpus to help his, vocational, setting students. I mean, they are not studying at universities, vocational schools. That means relatively they can be considered as low achievers, low motivation. The only goal is to pass examination, so that they can graduate. So he tried to show, originally he tried to show, his students to use COCA, and then students didn't like this idea because COCA is too difficult for them, So he had to compile a DIY corpus, and he selected text from testing papers, and students actually accepted this DIY corpus because they understand, okay, using this corpus can help them pass examinations. So I think actually the Chinese context is very complicated. You can find excellent students with advanced proficiency in excellent universities. You can, on the other hand, you can find very low students with very low proficiency. Okay, so I think this situation has to be treated separately, depending on the context. Okay.
Well, there's plenty of opportunities for potential DDL researchers, CPLP researchers out there in the Chinese mainland. Send us your papers. Chances are Dr. Ma or myself will be one of the reviewers. So if you can impress us, you've got a good chance that your paper will find its way into the good journals. And we always want to see more research from all around the world. And that's really one of the goals behind this seminar series, is to get speakers from as many different international contexts as possible and try and broaden the horizon of where most DDL research is undertaken. So that's unfortunately all the time we have today for the questions. If everyone could just thank our speaker again tonight. Thank you so much for agreeing to join our series. It's been a real pleasure with some really fantastic resources, and thanks so much, everybody.
Actually, I think I already sent the PowerPoint to Peter, and I think it
It's
has
been
been
shared a
shared,
number of times.
yeah, several
so
times on the WeChat. Sorry, not the chat, on the chat here, not the WeChat. Okay, okay, yeah. And in case you are interested in my website, so I just also